He wasn't just rising, he was strategic. Senator J.D. Vance had mastered the modern formula of political fame: outrage, spectacle, and precision attacks. He walked into interviews with the ease of a man who knew every camera angle, every headline cycle. His followers didn't just admire him, they echoed him. But this time, he wasn't swinging at vague policy. He chose Jasmine Crockett, a sitting congresswoman, a former public defender, a woman known not just for her sharp legal mind, but for standing unshakably in rooms that weren't built to welcome her. At first, his jabs were subtle veiled critiques cloaked in policy speak. "She thrives on chaos," he said. "She doesn't want solutions, she wants spotlight." The audience laughed, cable hosts nodded, and when that didn't get enough clicks, he pushed harder. "She fabricates data," he claimed. "She's not interested in truth, only power." He smirked as he said it, confident no one would question the script. Why would they? The comment section loved it. Clips went viral. On one, he leaned back in a leather chair, chuckling as he mocked her latest speech. On another, he called her the perfect example of performative progressivism. He was building a narrative not just to discredit her policies, but to damage her personhood. And it was working. Jasmine Crockett saw it all. Her staff brought her clips, quotes, media summaries. At first, she brushed them off. She knew the rules of the game. She'd survived worse, and in politics, silence could be armor. But then came Gloria. It was a muggy Thursday in Dallas, a modest community center on the south side, folding chairs, lukewarm lemonade, and neighbors who still believed politics could be personal. Jasmine arrived tired from a long week in D.C., but ready to connect. That's what always refueled her real people, unfiltered voices. Near the end of the meeting, a woman approached slowly, short with gray-streaked hair and a determined look. She wore a cardigan despite the heat. Her name was Gloria Martinez, a retired public school teacher. Jasmine had seen her before. She'd spoken at education town halls, once even written a letter of support during Jasmine's campaign. But today, Gloria looked hesitant. She clutched a newspaper folded neatly in her hands like it was sacred. "I read what that senator said about you," she said softly, "that you lie, that you twist the facts." She paused. Her voice trembled. "I've always trusted you, Jasmine, but they keep saying it over and over, and I don't know anymore." Jasmine felt something in her chest tighten. Not anger, not pride. It was deeper. It was hurt, because Gloria wasn't just any constituent. She was a mirror of the community Jasmine served, a reminder of why she ran, and now the smears had done what they were designed to do: plant seeds of doubt in good, decent people. That night, Jasmine sat alone in her kitchen, legal briefs spread across the table, untouched tea gone cold. She didn't cry, but she stared at Gloria's face in her mind and whispered aloud, "No, not this time." That was the turning point. No more silence. No more allowing someone else to shape the narrative of her name. She didn't want to fight in the press. She wanted the truth on the record, under oath, and in front of the very public J.D. Vance thought would never question him. The next morning, she called her attorney. 4 words changed the course of the story. "Let's take him down." It aired on a Sunday morning, the kind of show that older Americans watch with coffee in hand in quiet expectations. Not a shouting match, not a scandal dump. Just respectful conversation between policymakers. At least that's how it used to be. J.D. Vance was the guest that day. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, his hands steepled together, like a preacher preparing a sermon. The host asked a routine question about political division, and that's when he said it. Frankly, Vance chuckled. "I don't think Representative Crockett even believes half the things she says." There was no thunder, no shouting, just a well-timed smile. A calm, casual swipe calculated to seem harmless, but designed to destroy. He didn't call her dishonest directly. He did something more corrosive. He planted a seed that said she's not just wrong, she's pretending. She doesn't even believe in herself. And worst of all, you can't trust her. It spread faster than his previous attacks. The clip was trimmed, subtitled, and reposted across every platform, and in some corners of the internet, it became gospel. But what J.D. Vance didn't know was this. That one line did what no prior insult could. It didn't just hit Jasmine Crockett politically. It cut through to her core, to the years she spent defending the falsely accused, to the long nights preparing cases, as a black woman in rooms filled with doubt, to the oaths she took seriously when others treated them like theater. It struck at her integrity, and that was the last straw. She barely made it to the car. As soon as the studio lights faded and her team tried to play it down, "Don't let it get to you." As just doing it for headlines, Jasmine knew she had to get out of there. Fast. The moment she shut the car door, her hands began to tremble. The hum of the engine was the only sound. No music, no voices, just pressure. Then it came tears. Not the kind you can hide, not graceful, silent tears, but the kind that claw their way out of your chest when you realize you've been rewritten. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, one she kept for every case she'd ever handled. Every speech she'd ever given, every number she'd ever cited on the record. She flipped through pages frantically, not because she doubted herself, but because she could feel the world starting to. Every headline she read on her phone, "Crockett doubles down on false claims." Does Jasmine even believe herself more drama than data, each one a dagger? Not because they were clever, but because they worked. They turned her into something she wasn't. A caricature, a villain, a dangerous black woman trope dressed up in modern packaging. She had spent her life trying to be bulletproof, and now someone had taken her name and made it into a weapon. Against her. She gripped the steering wheel. Her chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. She had fought for so many people, and now she had to fight for herself. No more silence, no more hoping people see through it, no more waiting. This wasn't politics anymore. This was war. The walls of the law office were quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that only happens when everyone knows a storm is coming and no one dares to breathe it in first. Jasmine sat across from her attorney. Eyes still red, voice steady but low. "If I stay silent, this won't stop with me. They'll do it again. To another woman, another black woman, someone younger, someone with less power, someone who can't fight back." Her lawyer didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She wasn't asking for permission. She was declaring war. She opened a folder and slid it across the table. "Here's what they didn't expect," she said, her voice rising. "I document everything." She looked him in the eye, and for the first time in days, her hands stopped shaking. "They made me the villain, so now I'll become something they can't erase." It wasn't about headlines anymore. It wasn't about polls. It was about every girl who ever stayed quiet because she thought speaking up would destroy her. It was about truth. It was about history. In Jasmine, she was ready to rewrite it. The tension in the room was sharp like glass. Attorney Raymond Pierce leaned forward, his voice low but surgical. Defamation, just one word, but it landed like a gavel in a courtroom. He slid a document across the table. On the top line, Vance versus Crockett, allegations of character harm. "They've called you unstable, dishonest, incompetent," he said. "We don't sue to win back your name. We sue to make them pay for dragging it through the mud." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "You think we'll win?" He smiled, but not kindly. "Winning the case isn't the point. The $100 million lawsuit isn't about a payday. It's a statement, a declaration that lies have a price tag, a price they'll remember every time they open their mouths." Silence again, but now it wasn't fear. It was resolve. "They wanted a war," Jasmine said. "Let's give them one with subpoenas." The lawsuit made headlines overnight. But instead of taking it seriously, the media and J.D. Vance himself turned it into late-night comedy fodder. On a brightly lit conservative stage in Ohio with cameras rolling and a chuckling crowd, J.D. Vance raised the microphone like a smug stand-up comic. $100 million, he sneered. "Should I start a GoFundMe or just sell my tie?" Laughter erupted. Even the moderator couldn't help but giggle. But Jasmine, watching from her office, wasn't laughing. Her eyes didn't blink, her jaw locked. Her fingers trembled, because this wasn't just a joke. It was a broadcasted insult to every woman of color who ever demanded to be heard and was laughed at instead. "This isn't a punchline," she whispered. "It's patterned disrespect, and I won't let it continue." For days, Jasmine's legal team combed through everything. Messages, emails, voicemails, DMs. Dozens of gigabytes were filtered, printed, tagged. The pile on the courtroom table. Over 400 pages of carefully cross-referenced evidence. And then it happened. A junior clerk, not even a senior investigator, found a phrase buried in a casual Slack conversation between J.D. Vance's campaign aides. "It doesn't need to be true. Repeat it enough times, and it becomes truth." The room went silent. The attorney's hand froze on the page. Jasmine slowly stood, reading the quote out loud. It wasn't just manipulation, it was premeditated defamation. Her voice trembled. Not with fear, but with clarity. "That's not campaign strategy," she said. That's targeted destruction of character. And finally, the tide began to turn. The courtroom felt colder than usual. Jasmine Crockett sat in silence. To her left, her legal team ready. To her right, an audience filled with reporters, former doubters, and silent supporters. And directly across from her, J.D. Vance. He wasn't smirking this time. No teleprompter, no crowd to laugh on cue. Just him under oath. The judge adjusted his glasses. The jury leaned forward, and then it began. Her lawyer slid a file across the table. Exhibit C, internal campaign memo signed by the defendant. Jasmine didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The room could feel it. Truth had finally been weaponized. J.D. Vance shifted in his seat, a faint twitch in his jaw. For once, he couldn't out-talk the evidence. Pierce stood, calm, calculated. He tapped the envelope twice before opening it. Your Honor, this is an internal email dated March 3rd, addressed directly to Mr. Vance. Subject line, let's spin, this truth can wait. You could hear a pin drop. The entire courtroom froze. The click of a pen, the creak of a chair. Even the judge paused mid-sentence, so J.D. Vance went pale. He leaned toward his attorney and muttered through clenched teeth, damn it. They really found it. He didn't know the mic was still on. That whisper broadcast on every news station in America that very night. And suddenly the courtroom wasn't the only place gasping. Pierce wasn't done. He slid a screen capture onto the evidence table. 4 messages, 1 group chat. Names blurred, but one was unmistakable. She's too smart. We need to make her look unstable. Push the angry black woman angle. Keep JD smiling. He looks cleaner that way. The gallery gasped. Then someone in the back whispered, they planned all of this. It didn't take long. The courtroom screens lit up with real-time headlines. J.D. Vance's team plotted character assassination. Crockett smear campaign exposed. Outside, people were crying. Inside, they were clenching fists. The judge called for order, but America had already made up its mind. TikTok exploded. YouTube clips hit millions overnight. Hashtags like #WeStandWithJasmine were trending in 42 states. And the woman they tried to paint as unstable, she looked like the calmest one in the room. J.D. Vance stood up. His face was red. His voice cracked as he pointed toward Crockett. This is a setup. You think she's a saint? She's playing you all? He pounded the table once, twice. But Jasmine Crockett never flinched. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even blink. She just looked at him. A long, piercing gaze, the kind that doesn't need words. It was the look of a woman who knew she didn't need to fight dirt with dirt. The silence of the righteous speaks louder than the scream of the guilty. In that moment, the courtroom changed. Even those who once doubted her fell silent. Crockett didn't need a closing argument. She had already won. The trial footage went viral in less than 3 hours. Clips of Jasmine Crockett's unwavering silence paired with the exposed group chat messages spread like wildfire. On X, formerly Twitter, the hashtag surged. Truth matters, #CrockettVance, #she didn't flinch. Within 24 hours, over 6 million posts flooded in. One user wrote, I was a J.D. Vance supporter until I saw her face. Not a single word. That's what justice looks like. Another admitted, we were wrong about her, all of us. The media twisted everything. Former critics began deleting old posts. Podcasters, YouTubers, and even political commentators issued public apologies. In the chaos of confession, one thing became painfully clear. People weren't just supporting Jasmine. They were waking up. By 7 p.m. that night, the courthouse wasn't quiet anymore. It was glowing. Hundreds, then thousands gathered with candles. Mothers, veterans, teenagers, nurses, even pastors. All holding signs, all silent. One said, thank you for not staying silent. Another read, she spoke for all of us. In the crowd, someone played a slow violin version of America the Beautiful. The song drifted across the candlelight like a whispered prayer. A teenage girl held up a hand-drawn portrait of Jasmine Crockett. In bold red letters underneath it read, you stood. Now we rise. News helicopters circled above, but no one chanted, no one screamed. It wasn't a protest, it was a vigil, a national moment of reckoning. And in a world saturated with outrage, it was Jasmine's quiet fight that brought people to their feet. Back in her apartment, long after the crowd had left and the candles had burned out, Jasmine Crockett sat alone. No cameras, no speeches, just silence. She had a shoebox full of letters sent by strangers, supporters, doubters, dreamers. She read them every night, but this one stopped her. A pink envelope, handwritten, inside a folded sheet of notebook paper. At the top in blue ink, "Dear Ms. Crockett, I'm 12 years old. I don't know much about courts or lawsuits. But when I saw you on TV, I saw someone who didn't let the mean man win. You made me believe that good people can still win. Thank you. Love, Olivia." Jasmine put the letter down. Her hands trembled. And for the first time since the lawsuit began, she cried not from pain, but from purpose. She whispered, "This is why I did it." And in that moment, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a warrior. The courtroom was quiet. The verdict hadn't even been read yet. But J.D. Vance already knew. He sat there, stone-faced, staring ahead like a statue cracking from the inside. A photographer captured the exact second it happened. His jaw clenched. His fist slammed the arm of his chair. And then, just barely audible, "They're destroying me." His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even loud. It was hollow. Not the voice of a man fighting back, but of a man watching the walls close in. Somewhere in that instant, he wasn't the confident senator on the podium. He was just another man who thought lies would protect him until truth showed up with receipts. And the world saw it. Every camera lens caught it. And for the first time, Vance didn't control the story. Politics has no loyalty, only timing. In the days following the courtroom revelation, Vance looked the same. He wore the same tailored suits, gave the same half smiles. But when he walked into rooms, the air shifted. The handshakes fewer, the eye contact gone. One evening at a private fundraiser, a reporter overheard what would become a turning point. A longtime GOP strategist whispering into his whiskey glass, "Has not an asset anymore, has a liability." And with that, the unraveling began. Donors quietly pulled out. Campaigners stopped answering calls. Cable pundits stopped defending him. It wasn't the court that crushed him. It was the silence of those who once stood beside him. It started with one push notification. Breaking emails. Show malicious intent, Senator may face ethics probe. Then CNN, then MSNBC, even right-wing outlets picked it up not to defend, but to distance themselves. Screens filled with damning highlights deliberately mischaracterized Crockett's statements. Intent to manipulate public perception. Private chats reveal strategic defamation. The court of public opinion moved faster than any legal system. By nightfall, Vance's name trended globally, not as a leader, but as a cautionary tale. His press secretary resigned. The ethics committee announced a review. And for the first time, there was no one left to defend him. The crowd outside was silent, phones raised, cameras blinking. Not a chant, not a cheer, just breathless respect. Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the granite steps, her heels echoing in the still air like a closing gavel. She took a slow breath, looked not at the press, but at the people. This, she began, voice unwavering, was never just about me. This was about every woman, every person of color, every truth teller who's been dragged, smeared, and ridiculed simply for speaking up. Her words weren't loud, but they shook the city like thunder. We deserve better. And starting today, we demand it. The silence erupted into applause, not the frenzied kind, but the kind born of tears of truth and of something finally made right. The air outside the courthouse was electric, every ear, every eye locked on her. Jasmine Crockett's voice dropped lower, calmer, as if she were no longer speaking to the crowd, but straight into the hearts of everyone watching, both on the steps and across the nation's TV screens. "If we don't defend the truth," she said slowly, her words slicing through the silence, "then we will be drowned by the lies others want us to believe." It wasn't just a statement. It was a warning, a prophecy. And for many listening, it felt less like politics and more like a call to arms for the soul of the country. The applause still echoed, but Jasmine Crockett did not linger. She turned her navy suit catching the sunlight and began to descend the courthouse steps. Each stride was calm, steady, not triumphant, not bitter, but dignified, as if she were walking into history itself. Behind her, the crowd remained. Some were crying, some were holding their children tighter. And among them, young faces looked on with wide eyes, eyes that had just witnessed what courage looked like. Crockett did not need to say more. Her silence became the final punctuation. She left behind more than just a courthouse victory. She left behind a society that had been shaken awake, a people now forced to wrestle with truth and lies. And most importantly, she left behind a generation that would stand taller, braver, and firmer in defense of the truth. In that moment, Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a lawsuit. She carved a scar into history and planted a seed of hope for the future. The story of Jasmine Crockett is not just about politics or the courtroom. It's about truth and the courage it takes to defend it. In life, we will all face moments when lies seem louder than honesty, when injustice feels stronger than fairness. But Crockett's journey shows us something powerful. Lies can win headlines, but the truth wins history. So in our own lives, whether at work, in our families, or in our communities, we must remember to protect our integrity even when it costs us, to speak up even when silence feels safer, and to believe that defending the truth is never just for ourselves, it's for everyone who comes after us. Because when one person stands for truth, it gives others permission to stand too. If this story touched you, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe to Mr. Expose Stories, where we uncover hidden truths, expose injustice, and remind the world that courage still matters. Every click, every share, every comment helps keep these stories alive and keeps truth alive. So join us, stand with us, because the fight for truth is never over.